I got surgical emphysema, and I was told that there was a 30%, I have to have an operation to put like a tube in my gullet and in my bowel, and have an operation where there's a 30% chance I could die. When you're lying in your deathbed and you're regretful of all those opportunities you didn't take, you're never going to be worried about the risks that you took. It's always the things that you didn't do. And this is an opportunity to not just change your life, but change your family's life. It's not just an opportunity to make money, it's an opportunity to feel rewarded truly and fulfilled for the work and contribution you're doing to the world. I realised that if I wanted my life to change, I had to change myself. And I took responsibility for myself for the first time in my life. I made 6 figures in 7 or 8 months because I started to get people really good results as well. You know, there's just 2 parts of it. You need to have a good strategy and you need to be good at coaching. Product and selling it. What we did was we literally just poured our hearts into it and we shared our stories with it.
Well, much like with all of the other episodes, we have already started.
Right, okay.
You know, this is how we do it here at the Coaching Masters podcast. You might not even know that.
No.
You might not even know that. Of course, I am the host of the Coaching Masters podcast when we are live in the studio, and all of the viewers are going to see that we are in a different studio today. We have made the decision to come to a unique, one-off, secret location to interview Raymond Taylor. It needed to be in a different space with a different energy. But yeah, so we do things raw, unpolished, authentic, real. And so we've already started, Lewis. This is the start of the Coaching Master podcast. Podcast. This is where my brain works faster than my mouth. This is the start of the Coaching Masters podcast, interviewing co-founder of the Coaching Masters, Raymond Taylor. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I mean, it's a little bit surreal, really. It's like a full circle moment. We launched this podcast probably 3 years ago. It was called The Prisoner and the Postman back then. You remember that?
It was, yeah.
And if anybody doesn't know, that's because I was a prisoner. You can learn a little bit more about that today if you don't already know. And Liam was a postman. And as the brand matured a little bit, we decided to, I don't know, clean things up a little bit, be a little bit more professional.
Definitely.
And that became the Coaching Masters podcast. And then since then, we've had Diana and Bonnie and yourself do various episodes, but I haven't actually been on this podcast in a number of years.
Yeah, it must be a number of years, because of course when it was The Prisoner and the Postman, it was me and you together, and every episode that we did, bearing in mind it was always shot via Zoom, and we just used our home microphones, you know, our USB plugins, and in perfect action, right? We started a podcast, and that podcast very quickly grew into an iTunes top 10 podcast. And of course, as you can see now, all of these years later, it looks and it feels very, very different.
Well, and also I was in Bali during a pandemic, so it was like kind of impossible for us to be able to do this. But this is like, we've come a long way. We've got perfect equipment. We're in real life. This is the perfect time for the perfect man to interview me, and I'm interested to see what comes out, because I'm an open book, and obviously we speak every day. We're good friends, we're good business partners. You know, we've had a lot of dialogue over the years, but we've never actually sat in a formal interview or an informal, however you want to look at it, interviewee kind of format, and.
It's going to be good.
I mean, go for it.
Well, I'm
hit me.
You know, I'm pretty skilled at this now. I do this quite regularly. And it's interesting because the Coaching Master podcast, you know, it's a combination of interviewing very successful coaches. You would fall into that category.
I hope so.
If you weren't, you know, co-founder of the Coaching Masters, regardless, you would fall into that category. I'd have you on the podcast to interview you anyway, and of course success stories within the Coaching Masters, and I think we kind of both fall into that one as well in a funny way, even though we're the ones that created it. But I always start in the same place with the same question, and I want you to interpret this question however you want. Because there's no right or wrong answer, but it all comes down to what is the immediate thing that pops into your head when I ask you this question. Start at the beginning.
The first thing that pops into my head, something I've never shared before, it's not necessarily significant, but, and I'm going to answer your question, is actually calling out for what I think you would call a childminder. Because my mum and dad went to work and they put me with a childminder, and my first memories are actually of them, not of my mum and dad. And I used to call the childminder's husband Dad.
Wow.
Because I was there more, you know, spent more of my time with them. And when you said that, my first memory is me sitting on the toilet and calling out for not Sheila. Oh my God, Marie, her name was, to come wipe my bum. Right? Because that's what he did. He was like, when you finish, call out for me. I'll come wipe your bum.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know how to do it at that age.
No,
I don't know how long. Young
tiny
I was.
toddler.
Yeah. And that is as far back as I've ever gotten.
You know what?
But that's the answer.
It's really interesting, and that's why I love asking that question in that way, because honestly, you'll be surprised at some of the answers I get.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll say to someone, start at the beginning, and they'll go, well, I mean, I became a coach in 2017. And you know what I mean? It's just the first thing they go to. Or some of them will be like, well, I was 16 years old and this happened. Everyone has a completely different beginning, but it's interesting that you go right back to literally the beginning, like as far back as you can go. Why is that, do you think, when I ask you that question specifically? There's going to be a reason. We don't know what it is. Like, I mean, I don't know, but I want to be informed. Why is it that you go straight back to the very beginning?
I don't usually. That's the first time I've ever shared it. I've done a lot of podcasts, done a lot of interviews. The reason why I think is because I listen deeply to what you're asking me, right? Yeah. And I give you a specific answer, right? And you asked me to start at the beginning. So I gave you exactly that, right? And that's an important skill in coaching, isn't it? To listen. And you'd be surprised how many coaches don't, and they're thinking about in their head about all the crazy good stories they're going to be able to tell. And then you ask them a question, they give you a different answer. Not necessarily a relevant answer, because they're answering a question that they had in their own head, or something they'd pre-prepared, or something that they think would deliver value. Going off on a bit of a tangent here, but real coaching is just about listening, understanding truly what the client is trying to say, and then responding as best you can in that moment. And I answered the question as efficiently as I possibly could. Well, this is not necessarily an entertaining story, although it's probably quite nice for some people to know that I couldn't wipe my own arse at one point in my life. Of course. And actually that lasted for quite a number of years.
And it returned at one point and then it went away.
But yeah, that was the answer.
Well, it actually reveals a lot, and that's why I always ask the question. I always start with that, because for a few different reasons. One, it also reveals from some value, always, because there's a reason as to why you start in that one place, and we can immediately link it to the fact that as a good coach you need to be intently listening, right? So already immediately within a few minutes of the podcast we've learned something new about Lewis that he's never shared before, and we got some value. So it's a good question to open with. But also it then starts the journey of the chronological order of the timeline, which is what I always like to try to draw out from the people that I'm talking to, because with my guests, I like going into this blind, and I'm going to be completely transparent here and let you know something, let everybody know something. Every time I have a guest on this podcast, they fill out this massive thing. Whether I should be revealing this or not, I don't give a shit. They fill out this massive thing all about them. I purposefully don't read it. Because I want to reveal it as I'm talking to them, right? So that's why I always start there. So where I want to go next after that is with this in mind. What do we want the listeners to get out of this? Well, what we want them to get out of this is we want them to be inspired and motivated if they are an individual who's thinking about becoming a coach, and we want to be able to inform them as to how to do that. And we also want to inform those people who have just heard about coaching and they're kind of tiptoeing their way into it for the first time in their life. And the best way of doing that is knowing about your journey and where you've come from, what you've experienced, and what has brought you to this point today. So where do you go next after that? Because you've just revealed something quite significant, and that is that there are these individual people that are not your mum and dad that are actually in this parental position. There's a lot more to that than just that little funny story at the beginning. Where do you go from there?
To be honest, that's not something I've really unpacked in therapy before. It's only something that's come up more recently that I sort of remembered those earlier memories. After that, there's like a big gap between then and, I don't know, 9.
Wow. What is that, 3 to 9-ish? You said about 3?
I would guess, maybe even younger, maybe.
Yeah.
I think it was when pretty much as soon as the, what do you call it? What's the maternity leave or whatever it's called?
Yeah. Well, you were probably about 2. I mean,
it might have even been 1. As soon as the maternity leave was finished, I think I was.
Well, if you were sitting on a potty and you were doing a poo on a potty, waiting for someone to wipe your bum, you probably
I was with them for a number of years. Yeah.
Yeah, you probably just turned 2 at that point.
Okay, so yeah, there's a big gap between that and about 8 or 9.
Wow, that is a big gap.
And I can't really remember.
So when you say gap, what do you mean?
No memories.
0.
No. Well, no, there are some. I can remember getting a Tigger for Christmas once. And just being like, oh my God, this is like immediately like my, I remember it just being a significant present and just like I loved it straight away. And every memory seems to be about after that point.
Interesting. So what's the next thing you remember immediately after the Tigger? Not the next memory, not the next thing you can remember. I want you to try to remember something immediately after Tigger.
Back at that age.
Yeah. Straight after Tigger. What happened immediately after that?
My dad giving out the Christmas presents.
So I'm starting to unlock some things now.
Yeah. So he was very controlling as well. So he wouldn't let us just like open our presents. He would choose the one and he would get it and he would go, this one's for you. And he would like, yeah.
Have you ever shared that on a podcast before? Oh, this is going to be interesting, isn't it?
You were drawing out memories I've forgotten about. Yeah.
And in that immediate moment, what do you specifically remember about that? Tell me more about that.
I think there was a bit of frustration about the very controlling nature of the regimented way that we used to do Christmas. Although Christmas was actually like relatively good because we did it, everything else wasn't traditional and wasn't functional, but we made, I guess, the effort to try and have a decent Christmas. And it had a very specific way. For example, he would always have a bath. So I remember it quite a bit actually, but I don't know. Yeah, actually I do remember. Yeah. So he would have a bath before we were allowed to go downstairs.
Okay.
So we had to all go downstairs at the same time.
Okay.
And I know that there's lots of kids that like as soon as they wake up, they're downstairs. So we'd be sitting there absolutely buzzing. There's all these presents downstairs and we'd have to wait for him to have a bath. And he would have a long bath. Like I'm talking an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's doing it on purpose.
Right.
Feels like it is.
Okay.
And then we're not allowed to go and look at the presents.
Okay.
We've got to have breakfast first.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
Then there's lots of memories here now.
Good. Here we go.
Sneaky bastard.
I knocked the big domino over, didn't I? Here we go. Knock all the rest of them down.
And then we'd have a very specific breakfast, which I liked, but it was smoked salmon, scrambled eggs.
Yeah, traditional.
Right. But this is the part that really, really got to me. He would make me and my brother wash up before we could go and open the presents.
Okay.
Just ruin the day.
Okay.
It's like, we were on let's enjoy it.
Yeah.
Leave the dishes.
It's gone. It's gone now. The feeling's gone.
Yeah, I'm not even bothered anymore. He would make us wash up first, and then we get to enter and have this like, it's nice that we get to experience that together, and yeah. And my dad didn't buy those presents. I know that my mum bought them all anyway. So my mum was on a modest salary. She worked in a factory. My dad was an IT manager. My dad was the one that was bringing in the money, but he wouldn't buy the presents. My mum would buy the presents herself. My dad would normally buy one present, and my mum would buy like the other 20 odd. Yeah. Makes me look like I was spoiled, but they were relatively cheap presents. No, not cheap. It was Christmas. I think was done quite well. I think I was looked after quite nicely over Christmas in comparison to some of the other things.
Well, we can say it's like a normal, traditional, typical family that grew up in your area at Christmas.
Yeah. And it was nice for us all to be able to see, the reaction, because my mum had spent, probably all of her wages on that.
Yeah.
And then we'd start opening them, and there'd be a bit of jealousy between me and my brother. Every time he got a present, I'm like, oh, I wanted that, and he was probably the same with me. And that's sort of how it went.
So I got a question for you, and I want you to be very open-minded about this question, as I'm sure that you will be. What do you think was the highest positive intention that your dad had for doing that?
So my default went to like, what did he want to get out of it, like in terms of something for himself? But if you're looking at a positive intention,
the highest positive intention for you and your brother,
either discipline, or making sure that we fully embrace that moment as a family together, rather than rushing down, opening the presents, ripping them all up in 2 minutes like a lot of families do. He was like, I'm gonna drag this out and make sure that we all enjoy this together.
Yeah, for sure. What part does delayed gratification play in your life at the moment?
Don't like it.
Just what part does it play? Tell me about that.
What part does it play? It's not something I default to, so I don't really have much of that, and I try and avoid that. I'm more of an instant gratification kind of guy. Even if I have long-term goals that do have, a delayed effect, I'll still make sure there is, instant gratification along the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't play a big role in my life because I try and avoid that.
Sure, yeah. Try to avoid it. And so you want to create a way of moving through your life and working where there are moments of instant gratification, even if you've got long-term goals and long-term visions.
Of course, yeah.
And how has that served you well?
Yeah, very well. In more recent years, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, and how specifically?
Well, I'm constantly striving, I'm constantly achieving. It could also be argued that, you know, it's serving me well in some aspects of my life, but not in other areas, health-wise, for example. Maybe I'm, you know, pushing myself too hard at times. But it's definitely not served me well in younger years of my life, because that instant gratification came in the form of drugs or reckless behavior or, you know, adrenaline or, so it's been a little bit of a roller coaster with the instant gratification, but yeah, it's helped me get ahead quickly when harnessed and focused in the right areas.
Yeah, sure. So with maturity, it's become an asset.
For sure.
Interesting that, isn't it? Reflecting back on memories that you had actually forgotten about completely. And just with a couple of questions, we can unlock it. And it seems to be quite a significant thing.
Yeah.
They say that voids create values, right? And there's this void of really needing to delay gratification in a big way, because obviously as a kid that's excruciatingly painful. You know, you can't even sleep the night before because you can't wait to run downstairs and rip open those presents, and then knowing that you're going to have to delay it and delay it and delay it and delay it, that's created this massive void. And so instant gratification is going to be something that's actually really important to you, which in later years and mature years has served you well.
It was interesting. I was talking to my mum recently, and this was getting a bit older. I'd probably say I was maybe so maybe 8, 9. I can't remember exactly when it was, but it's very interesting actually, because I've got backpacks outside. I'm about to go and do a 2-week camper van tour in Wales and Scotland. Yeah. And this is the first time I've gone back to Wales since we used to have like our yearly family holidays in Wales. At the time I hated it because my dad would literally put us on, you know, huge 14-hour walks, and I was about 8 or 9 years old. My brother was about 4.
Wow.
And we would climb like Snowdon, which is the biggest mountain in England and Wales, and like everyone would be looking at my younger brother and they'd be like, how on earth is he doing it?
Yeah.
And sometimes he'd do scramble. There was like a route where you could scramble and you'd literally have to climb up this mountain.
Yeah.
And I would cry my eyes out the whole way through.
Right.
And he would, and we'd put it, and the food that we would have, it was so limited that I don't think my dad understood nutrition, because like, I'm not joking, for 14 hours, constant walking, in a blizzard sometimes, he would give us like 2 corned beef rolls, an energy bar and an orange. I was dying. I'm not joking, but you know, and he probably just thought, oh, you know, kid crying, moaning. I'm like, no, I'm shutting down. And I used to hate it, absolutely hate it, but he liked it, so we all went, you know.
Right, okay.
And and I spoke to my mum about that recently, and I said, I think they put the SAS through, you know, less than that. And she said, it's all teaching you about resilience, son.
So she was game for it. She was like, well,
no,
you know what?
I think she just played around, to be honest, because when I said I used to cry my eyes out the whole way through, she went, so did I. We're just like, my mum, me and my brother were just traipsing behind my dad.
Right, okay.
You know,
and you're going back there.
And I'm going back there, yeah. And because back then, when you're a kid, walk-ins was just horrible.
Yeah.
And he used to take us around shopping centres as well. I used to hate that as well.
Okay.
Like, sometimes I used to like, he would just like, right, we're going out, and I'd be like, it's just dread. Where are we going?
Really?
And it's like, we're going to like the furniture shop. No. And it's like, or IKEA.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I used to hate IKEA. And I tell you what, something my dad did that, you know, it might be minor. Let's talk about traumas, right?
Yeah,
Traumas come in all
on.
shapes and sizes.
Go on.
There's a couple of things he's done to me over the years. Some very big, some very small. I feel bad for throwing him under the bus right now because he's obviously passed away. But
sure, but it's your story, though.
Yeah.
So that's why we're here.
There's a couple of things he done, you know, that I think were really out of order. One of them was traipsing me around IKEA. Sometimes I'm in there for 4 or 5 hours. They're looking at every bloody thing on the way. For a kid, that 4 or 5 hours is like 3 days.
Yeah, sure.
It feels like never ending. And then when you turn a corner, when you think you're going to get out,
it goes on again.
It goes on again. Yeah. And I got promised the meatballs at the end.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I hate you, but I'm kind of in for this deal because their meatballs are good.
Yeah.
Got to the end, no meatballs.
And what was the conversation? What was the reason?
Well, just, no, we're going home.
There was no conversation.
It was a cheat. It was cheated me.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And another, what was the other thing he did? this was so when I was about 11, I went through this sort of rebellion. I'm going to grow my hair long. And I grew it, and it was in that in-between stage where it's over the years, and it's looking trampy, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, get your hair cut, you look like a fucking idiot, kind of thing. And I was like, no, I'm growing it, you know? I was sort of going for a bit of a stage where I was finding myself, and I thought that was cool. And, you know, no, I'm trying to grow it out. It looks a bit, you know?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'll tell you what, how about we take it to hairdressers and we'll get a little trim up, just so that it looks nice, but it still can grow.
Yeah.
Give him a little whisper to the barber, didn't he?
Right, okay.
Cut it right off.
Right.
I fucking went mental.
Yeah.
You fuck yeah. It's our first, probably. No, not our first. But yeah, there's a couple of things like that just stick with me, where it's just pure betrayal, isn't it? And just like cheating and lying.
Yeah.
And these are the smaller things that he done over the years.
But it's interesting because these are things that I've never heard you talk about before.
And I've never spoken about them or thought really about them until they come up.
Well, there you go. Tigger started this, by the way.
Tigger almost certainly was bought by my mum, I can tell you that.
Yeah. Well, it's just, you know, just a little thing like that. That's all it takes to then kind of unlock the next door and the next door and so on and so on. So, you know, let's keep unlocking doors there. What comes immediately after that? Because you said you were about 11. Did you say that with the haircut?
Yeah, I'd probably say so, yeah. So at this stage, and actually before, every single conversation we would have at some point would turn into a blazing row. It had to. It's just that's the way it would progress. Unless we just sort of mutually decided, okay, we finished this conversation, but that just never happened. It was almost just like we spoke until the argument happened. Okay. And I don't know why it kept on happening or how it kept on happening, but it just did. Like we didn't get on. Just simply didn't get on. And one thing I said to him once is, what do you think about family? We said, well, they're just people, aren't they? You know, this is that, just ruthless as that. And I think what I was getting at is because he treated my brother differently to me. So he referred to my brother as the intelligent one. Right. Because he read books. Okay. My brother had a bookshelf, read loads of books, so he was the intelligent one. Right. And my brother was a funny one as well. Okay. So he was all the ones and I was nothing. Yeah. And what's the age gap between you and your brother? 5 years. 5 years. Oh, okay. Yeah. And then another thing that really sticks with me is we went swimming once and I was just thinking, I thought you were going to go, we went swimming once and he tried to drown me. I forgot all about that. Bastard. Why did you drown my brother as well, at least? No, but he, my brother made a good joke, considering he was probably, you know, if I'm going to swim with my dad, I've got to be young. I've got to be like maximum of 10. Otherwise, you know, you're turning into sort of, you know, the stage where you're not doing that anymore. Yeah. And my brother must have been 5 or younger. Maybe I was 9, he was 4, something like that. And my brother said, I don't do lengths. I'm a shit swimmer, or I'm a bad swimmer. I do depths. So basically said he drowned. It's a good joke. And he laughed really loudly and went, see, Lewis, why can't you be funny like that? Wow. Wow. And at the time, I was just like, I don't know. You know, there's no particular immediate pain there because I don't understand really what that means, but I'm absorbing it all. Oh, of course. Yeah. And I don't know why. We didn't see eye to eye. I don't. Oh, actually, you're digging some stuff out now. Go on. So there was a time where I really caused a rift between me and him. So it was when I must have been 11. I was in secondary school now. Loads of stuff had gone on before this. You know, him hitting me, shouting in my face, calling me a buffoon, stupid, all this sort of stuff all the time. But my mum went on a yoga retreat in Spain, I think it was. And for the first time in my life, it was just me and my dad at home. Right. And I don't know I can't remember exactly what happened, but he used it as an opportunity to be even more of a bastard, basically. And I ran away. Right. So I ran to I stayed at my friend's house, literally lived on the same road, but he didn't know where I was. And he went up to the school and everything, tried to ask where I was, couldn't find out. And it was a few years later he revealed that was something he did that he kind of never forgave me for, kind of thing, because he felt like he'd really let probably my mum down, I think, because that was the first time he was full responsibility of me, and something like, you know, and he had to bring up my mum and say Lewis is missing or whatever, and he blamed me for that, you know, rather than taking responsibility for what occurred that made me run away. It's like Lewis has done this again, and fair enough, I can see how that could have hurt him. And then after that, our relationship was just like gone. Okay, it's like he was very ruthless. I think at that point he was like, "You're out." What do you remember as one thing that
you had done that could have potentially have caused a rift before that? Because that was at 11, and you said, oh, loads of stuff happened before that. Is there anything you can remember that you think, oh, actually, yeah, when I was younger than that, I did this, or I went here, or I said this, that you think could create a bit of a rift?
The only thing I can think of is I was a very, very different kid in terms of I was very loud and energetic, and like I always tell this story, but there was come and see your son at nursery day.
Okay.
Where you can kind of just come and have a little look and see what they're doing.
Okay, I've not heard this story.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And my mum turned up to see. Obviously, my dad didn't care, and that actually reminds me of another time. I'll come back onto this, but I was nearly dying of further. I burst my appendix once.
I'll remind you of.
Okay, I'll come back to that. So I was at nursery, and all the kids were sitting neatly on the carpet, like reading a book or whatever, and I had put a clown costume on, and I was running around the room with a drum singing happy birthday.
Okay.
That gives you a bit of context of what I was like.
Yeah, sure.
I don't like to sit on the floor.
Yeah,
you know, I want to do this seems better.
Yeah,
you know, like, so I was always a little bit like that, a bit of a maverick or whatever, and it's obviously played out like that for the rest of my life in different ways. And
sure.
But the character has always been there.
Okay, and that was in nursery.
That was when I was, exactly. Yeah. So I've always been like that. And I've always been naughty. That's what they deemed it then.
The label you were given.
Yeah, that was naughty that then progressed to bad.
Sure.
But then it started naughty. It's a bit of a naughty kid. Bit of a cheeky kid.
Very lazy label that would have been fucking used quite commonly back in those days.
And I think because of that's the only thing that I can remember that I could have done that, you know, made me look that I did something wrong. Other than that, it's just like every time we had a conversation, sometimes I'd consciously be like, I'm going to go down and try and have a nice conversation with my dad to try and see if we can have a good conversation without this turning into an argument. Yeah. And then it would. And then every time it did, I would get more and more angry at the fact that it did turn into an argument because I was internalizing it and thinking it was my fault. Yeah. I was like, oh, I fucked it up again. Sure. I've ruined it again. Like, I can't seem to get this right. You know, what am I doing wrong? And I used to run to my room and I had this cabinet, sort of cupboard. You open the cupboard and there was this cabinet with a mirror on the top of it. So I'd open up the cupboard just to look at myself in the face and punch myself in the head as hard as I could. Wow. And that was my way of releasing anger towards myself because I thought I was a problem. Right. You know, I didn't understand that I was being verbally and physically abused by my dad. I just thought that I kept on being a naughty kid and getting into arguments with him. Sure. Because he's the authority figure, so it must be me that's the problem. Yeah,
and how old were you when you were opening up that cupboard and hitting yourself?
8, 9.
Right. Tell us about the appendix.
Yeah, and there was a time when I was I can't remember where I was. Sort of what led me on to that was I was thinking, well, sure he wouldn't have turned up to he wouldn't have turned up to the nursery because I just don't think he gave a shit a lot of the time. But once I had my appendix burst. Well, actually, prior to that, for 3 days, I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, I was crawling on the floor. I lost 2 stone in weight, and bear in mind, this is when I was 18 years old, I weighed, I think, 11 stone or 10 stone. So I was like a rake, I was skinny as it was, lost 2 stone, face was all drawn in, and I was like crawling, just trying to feel better, and I was like, Dad, it's like, I'm dying. Yeah. Literally, I'm dying. And he went, shut the fuck up, I'm on the phone. Slam the door, right? Then, like because he was convinced I had food poisoning. Right. He had food poisoning before once, and he got through it, and he was fine. Right. So he's like, right, you got food poisoning, so shut the fuck up. Okay, and I was like, just barely, alive. And then at some point, he realised that it was getting worse, and he took me to the GP. Right. And the GP called an ambulance. And they said your appendix is burst and it's leaking poison around your body, and you can actually die from that. Right. You are dying. There is poison going around your body, and it was actually gangrenous. They said in the end as well, like it was. And anyway, he didn't even come and visit me in the hospital. Right. Okay. As well after that, so it's like it's all this information that just makes me feel unloved by him.
And that's the end result of all of those experiences. Would you say? Feeling unloved.
Yeah. I mean, feeling bad is the first sort of cognitive understanding I had of it because of all the labels I was given.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we haven't really even gone into it, but of course I was, well, not of course, but I was given an antisocial behaviour order, which is an ASBA at 14, expelled from school at 15 due to all the, you know, being bad.
Yeah.
So the council said I was bad. School said I'm bad. Then getting arrested from the age of 14.
Yeah.
Bad. And then probation sent me for a psychiatric assessment as a part of one of my sentences. Diagnosed with mental health condition, antisocial personality disorder, which is like a sociopath or a psychopath. Bad.
Yeah.
Everywhere I go, everyone's telling me I'm a naughty, bad kid.
Yeah.
Including my dad.
Yeah.
You know, the number one figure that you would look up to. And then the bad, I don't know if I ever really felt unloved because I didn't understand that enough.
Sure, not yet.
Yeah, not yet. But I just felt bad, and I guess I did feel unlovable. Yeah, but I just wasn't
unlovable.
Yeah, unlovable. Yeah, but it wasn't cognitively quite aligned with that language. But I had that sensation because everyone was telling me the same thing. It wasn't like I thought my dad doesn't love me.
Yeah.
It was like my dad doesn't love me because I am this person.
Well, that's actually a really interesting distinction that we got to make because, of course, feeling unloved and unlovable are very different. You know, one leads into another. But so that's a really interesting revelation that I think we've just had is that actually created a sense of I'm unlovable.
Yeah.
And I know, of course, you've listed the experiences you then went on to have, but I still want to ask the question, you know, what does that do to a young man?
Well, I'll tell you what it did. At 18 years old, I found my first true love. And it absolutely consumed me. I love bombed her, and I was obsessed with her, and she let me around the house every single day, and we would be in front of the TV with her family, laughing and joking about eating dinners.
Do you think this is because this is the first little introductory idea of that someone could love you?
Yeah. And it filled that void. And also the family void as well that I wasn't getting. It was love and family at the same time.
Yeah.
Because like her family would like cook me dinner, and I'd be like, oh.
You were in like a fucking Cadbury's advert all of a sudden. There's like family sitting around laughing together. Yeah,
and I was like, oh, this is what it's supposed to be like. I was like, I just take my dinner and I go to my room. And in fact, actually, because of stepping back, my dad decided to ring fence me from the family at one point, so I didn't affect my brother.
Okay.
Because I was selling drugs, and I got my brother to sell drugs for me and all sorts. It was it's quite justified at that point. But they ring fenced me, which is essentially cutting me off. Not financially, they never give me any money anyway, but just said, you are no longer a part of the family. Okay. So in terms of rejection, you don't get much better than that.
Sure.
So I would take, I used to take my dinner to my room. Now I just didn't get any.
Yeah. Okay.
And my dad would walk down the path back from work, and I'd be like, woof, straight upstairs.
You're back on the power bars and the oranges at this point.
Yeah.
Not even any dinner.
My corned beef rolls. And so I found this love, and I was with her for only a year, but I felt love. On reflection, it was actually a really bad relationship. I actually think she was probably cheating on me. Well, no, anyway, it wasn't a good relationship, but that was my first one. Didn't have much to base it on.
Yep.
And head over heels in love with her. And then my drinking was starting to get bad actually at the age of 17 because my dad was an alcoholic and my mum was a heavy drinker. My dad would drink like a bottle of vodka, 4 beers and a bottle of wine every night.
Wow.
But he would drink that bang on 7 p.m. That was his thing. Wouldn't drink before 7 p.m.
Yeah, it's almost a justification, isn't it? It's like, well, I don't drink before 7 p.m, so it's not that bad.
Yeah, I'm not an alcoholic, but he would get absolutely... But I don't know, he held it well. Because it's not like he was... Tell you what, when he was always... we always had arguments, he wasn't drunk. Weirdly.
Sure, yeah.
When he was drunk, he was just sitting in front of the computer, getting drunk, and then stumble upstairs, get knock out.
Right, okay.
But anyway, so he was an alcoholic, and my mum was... as well. She admits to be an alcoholic at one point, but she was never as bad as my dad, but she was drinking a lot, and it was just always in the house. So drinking for me was like, oh, people, everyone drinks.
That's what people do.
Yeah. So I would start drinking a lot, and then proportionally, I guess, probably more than what you would as well, because I'd seen the amount they would drink. So at 17, 18, I was starting to get like really drunk, and I drank a bottle, maybe a bottle sounds like a lot, but I might have drunk a bottle of whiskey one night at 18, and that used to always bring out the bad side of me. Like whiskey for some reason brought out the bad side of me. But I must have got into an argument with my girl. Well, I got into an argument with my girlfriend at the time. Don't know what I said. Don't know what I did. Can't remember. But she turned around, she looked at me and said, well, do you know what? I cheated on you. And it was like, I've never had a moment where I felt so many things and understood so many things in 0.1 of a second, like a millisecond.
What sort of things did you understand?
Loss, first of all. I immediately knew she was gone.
Yeah.
Because I knew there's no way we can repair this.
Sure.
So for some reason, that just clicked. I felt rejected because of the fact that she'd done that to me.
Yeah.
So she'd made the decision to do that. And then I felt the rejection of my family for the first time.
Okay.
I didn't feel it before. When I was ring fenced, I was just like, oh, I don't care.
Yeah, yeah.
But then for some reason, it's like I realized it triggered that from before. And I was like, I've lost everything. That's how I felt. I've lost everything. And I knew it. You are unlovable. You know, it was like confirmation. And I saw red, blacked out, smashed her kitchen up, pulled a drawer out. The drawer fell to the floor. I looked down, 6-inch kitchen knife. And before I knew it, and I'd slit both sides of my throat. Don't know if you could see that.
Yeah.
You can, yeah. And the next spurt of blood.
Yeah.
And paramedics get caught. You know what I do? Start fighting the paramedics.
Right.
Let me die. You know, like literally, like struggling. And then in the end, I got arrested. And they pinned me down and stitched my neck up. And then I still ripped all the cannulas out and went back up to my ex's house because I was in this daze of, you know, just not just wanting her back, but just knowing I couldn't, but just like not knowing an alternative. And got section under the Mental Health Act for the first time. But what was bizarre about this is I can't get over this to this day. I was literally put in a padded room, like as cliche as you could imagine. And I had just slit both sides of my throat. And I'd turn up. You know, I just had a little bit more detail to that story. When I ripped the cannulas out of my arm, I was in a hospital gown. There was blood everywhere. I ran probably about half an hour to get to her house and knocked on her door. And she just opened the door and I had nothing to say. So I just stood there with a blank expression and didn't say a word. Because I just didn't know what to say, right? And then I got arrested. And I was sectioned under the Mental Health Act, right? Because I was fucking mental. The next day, they went, so who's going to pick you up then? I was like, my mum. My mum picked me up. She drove me home. She didn't say a word. And that was that.
Right. Wow.
So mental health.
That's revealing, isn't it?
Mental health, just basically put it down to silly drunk boy.
Right.
Got into a heartbreak. And mum thought, I can't even comprehend what just happened. No. We're not talking about that.
No, not even going to get into that.
Yeah,
Just say nothing.
And at this point, I've got bulbous scars on my neck because they had to stitch it up. They had to like, you know, it was a centimeter out,
Sure.
and it's literally black stitch.
Yeah.
So I look like bloody Frankenstein.
Have you ever spoken to your mum about that event since that day? Never once. No.
And even now, like, because also, I mean, we didn't even touch on it, but when I was 11, I was sexually abused as well. And my mum has since listened to podcasts and she knows my story. She now knows that part. And we've never spoken about that as well.
Just not mentioned, not spoken about.
But one insight I did get is we did a documentary recently and my mum was interviewed for the documentary. And I actually asked, because I was curious about what was going to come up.
Yeah.
What was she going to say? Because I want to know.
Yeah,
I'd love to have that conversation.
And there's a good bit of a divide there, isn't there? Because it's not like you're the one sitting there asking her the questions. Yeah. You've got this separation of it's someone else that's asking the questions.
And the reason why I haven't asked is because, interestingly, when I was in prison, I was going through this transformation. We haven't even got to that part yet. But if we got time today, this might be a two-parter. But
I think we got time.
Okay, but I'd gone through this realization that I wanted to change. We can talk about that another time. But I wrote her some really deep, heartfelt letters saying, I want to be closer to you. I want to be better as a family, you know. At this point, my dad was already dead. So, and yeah, on that note, I walked in and found him dead as well. So that was another experience to add to the list. But yeah, I said to her, and I all I can think is that she put it down to a little bit of, oh, look, he's cracking up in prison. Right. Do you know what I mean? But the point of the matter is she never responded to the letters. Right. Okay. So that kind of created a bit of a, she can't go there. She told me before, actually, she was taught to like grow up to speak if you're spoken to. Okay. Very strict. My granddad was in the military.
Don't share.
Yeah, don't talk.
Okay.
Even, actually, funny enough, last night I stayed around her new husband and her house and under her roof for the first time in the last 10 years. Wow. Because it was closer to the airport that I've just flown in from. And she tells me she can't sleep at night. And we went through a couple of things that I've learned about sleep and how you can improve it. And one of them, I said, I said, therapy. I said, if if you've got lots going on in your head, when you start to go to sleep, there's no distractions anymore. You're just left with your own thoughts. And, sometimes you've got to just get that out and talk. And she was like, oh, no. Oh, no. I was like,
wow.
Honestly, there's a lot you can unpack there, because she's been through a lot of trauma herself.
Yeah,
of course,
for sure.
With me, with, my dad, with her parents, both her mum and dad.
And there will be all sorts of things in her own life before she even met your dad that you don't know about.
Of course. And she's like, oh, no. Because she's not, she doesn't want to go there.
Sure. Interesting. That is interesting, isn't it? Generational things. They can keep us stuck, or they can let us flourish, Yeah. So there's a lot there. Of course.
There is, yeah.
There is a lot. And there's a lot of new stuff there as well that you've not spoken about before. And it all moves us nicely along this chronological order, along this timeline. And of course, there is always definitive moments that like crumble us and hold us back, and definitive moments that project us forward. What would you say is the very first moment of transformation in your life? The first?
Well, this is something I don't share often as well, because it doesn't make the story so black and white and extreme. But I have tried to get my life together quite a few times. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to be a drug addict, alcoholic, violent criminal. I wasn't a career criminal. I wasn't thinking about what's my next move.
No.
Apart from, I guess, when I'm selling drugs, that was a bit more strategic. But overall, that was just a life that kind of I fell into. It's just my life.
Yeah.
I can't really explain any more than that.
Yeah.
That's who I was, and that was who my friends were, and that was my life.
Yeah.
But I didn't want that. And there were times where I'd made an effort. So there was like 1 year in school where I really buckled down, and I noticed big changes, and I got some good grades, etc. There was 1 year when I was on a suspended sentence. I got a 2 year suspended sentence. So if I got arrested, I'd go back to jail for 2 years. And I got another girlfriend as well, which kind of gave me that little void filled for a while. And I started two businesses. So I had a bouncy castle business and a sumo wrestling suit business combined, called Hype Events. Bearing in mind I was still cocaine addict and still fucking punching people's heads in on the weekends, but to me that was actually still like a significant upgrade.
Yeah, sure.
Only had one fight this weekend.
And not all the money came from drugs, some of it came from the sumo suits.
Yeah, I mean, I bought the bouncy castle with drug money, but
you got to start somewhere, haven't you? That's all the money you had.
Exactly.
Didn't have any other money.
And I was trying to get out, but they kept clawing me back in. No, I'm joking. I was no Scarface, but I thought I was. But so that was a time. And then also, so when I was 16 years old, the day I was 16, I never thought about going to uni, and I was expelled from school at 15. So I was like, I knew I had to go make some money somehow. The day I was 16 years old, I walked straight into a telesales place. Actually, stepping back, it's quite interesting. I've never shared any of this stuff before. When I was 15 years old, some lady gave me and I think you might have worked there, actually, if I remember rightly. But
Zenith Windows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
So some lady gave me a flyer at Zenith Stay Bright. It's like, earn cash, immediately, no experience. I was like, all right. I was 15 years old. I turned up, and I travelled into St Albans, which is like, 20 minutes away from where I lived in Watford, Kings Langley, if you know it. I don't know, how international we're going here, but somewhere around the London area.
Yeah.
And 15 years old, they put me on the phones, and this just sounds like one of those entrepreneurial bullshit stories, but I just started smashing it.
Yeah.
Just started like the team leader. I was doing better than the team leader that was training me on day one.
Yeah.
And it was an automatic dialer, so it just kept on going, and I kept on doing really well. And at the end of the day, there was like, can you put in your national insurance number and everything? Let's get you signed up. And I was like, oh, I ain't got one of them. I'm 15. And they was like, oh, you can't work until you're 16. So I was like, no worries. And then when I was 16 years old, I walked straight into a different deli sales place that was local. I was like, I want a job. And I become like one of the top salespersons straight away.
Sure.
Why am I even getting onto this? Anyway,
Moments of transformation.
Moments of transformation. Yeah, so there was...
And you were talking before about how you thought, I'm never going to go to uni.
Yeah, so that's why I went in to get a job, and I did well there. And then also, when I'd come out of prison the second time, I realised that I needed to clean my act up.
Oh yeah, and you had a girlfriend at the time, and you were on probation.
Yeah, so that was when I had the oh yeah, right, okay, I got it. So that company that I used to work for, I realised that it didn't make sense for me to be doing the phoning myself, and also they must be making a lot of money because they were all driving like fast cars and stuff like that. So I couple of years later, I booked a meeting with the owner, and I was like, if I could bring you sales from outside, what's the maximum amount you would give me? And we worked a deal out, and I opened up my own office, and I hired some of the lads around the streets on commission only, ringing up, booking these. We were selling business phone lines, and we were getting people on 5-year contracts, and it was dodgy as hell. They were actually on what was the program? Watchdog in the end.
Oh, were they really?
Yeah, they were.
Zenith.
No, this was a different one. This was
okay.
They changed the name about 20 times. It was like Elite Calls, Premier. I actually probably shouldn't mention it just in case. But yeah, we'd get people. When I used to work there, it was called Platinum Telecom, and obviously most people were BT, and they would tell us, just say PT and say it really quick, so they think you're calling from BT. And rather than saying 5-year contract, they told us to say that we were on a 5-year price promise guarantee.
Right. Okay.
So anyway, some really like shady stuff. But anyway, I started this office, and I had like 5-6 people working for me. But then the drugs, the alcohol, violence, and everything just sort of failed because I stopped.
Was it making money?
Yeah, it made money.
That office.
Yeah, it would have worked if I'd have. I just at one point decided I can't bother, don't want to do this anymore, I want to do more drugs, I want to.
Right. Yeah.
My lifestyle just didn't really allow me to sort of fully embrace that at the time. So, I've had those moments where I wouldn't say transformation, but you said the very first time. I can't say the very first time was when I was 25 years old. It's like I'd made attempts.
Yeah, sure.
But they just didn't really go.
Well, they are in their own way, these moments of transformation, aren't they? Because they are attempts at creating something better than what you're currently experiencing and what you're in. So I think that they are important parts of the story. And again, new information, new parts of the story that, you don't share.
Very entrepreneurial, obviously, because this is stuff that my mind just got. It's like, well, I'm not going to, what's the point of me keeping ringing? I can only ring so many times.
Yeah.
And there must be more money to make because I'm not driving a Porsche like them lot. I don't think many people think like that.
What does it take, or what are the attributes needed in order to have that entrepreneurial mindset?
I guess belief that you can do more than what someone tells you can do. Because they're going to put you in a box. They're going to try and utilize you to make them money. But if you're someone that's like, I don't really want to be that person for you. I want to be that person, at least for me. And just pushing against it. Yeah. And looking for something bigger, because I could have just stayed in that job and I was earning actually crap money, but seemed good at the time. It was ruthless. Like, it was literally ringing at Yellow Pages, which is illegal. And sometimes if the sales were low, they'd be like, right, everyone stand up. You can sit down if you get a sale.
Right. Okay.
Next sale gets a $5. Everyone's like,
extra $5.
But yeah, all these times it taught me a lot of stuff. And but yeah, those were the first moments of making some changes.
So what would you say then is the first moment of significant transformation?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you said transformation, because realization's different, and I had realizations before this that made me start to change. And the moment, was when I went to prison, and I shared this story so many times, so I'll try and just sort of summarize it. But I rang up my friend, and they told me there was a picture of me outside a courtroom and a picture of me outside the courtroom 7 years before, identical pictures, but with a caption above, "Nothing changes." And that was the realization that nothing had changed. 7 years had gone past, and I was still doing the same things over and over again, expecting a different result, as we kind of talk about now. And I realized that if I wanted my life to change, I had to change myself. And I took responsibility for myself for the first time in my life. And I realized that if I'm the problem, then I'm also the solution, because I was blaming everything and everyone around me. Of course, easy to play that blame game. Yeah. So that was a realization that I had, but I didn't start to transform until probably a month or two after, whilst in prison. And I would say it occurred when I was in the maths and English department. And first of all, when I went into the maths and English department, I was very, very scared of looking stupid, because of my dad used to call me a buffoon. And that's the number one thing that sticks with me, feeling stupid, feeling like that was kind of probably the cause of all this, him not loving me and all this sort of stuff. He was just successful in my eyes at the time, but actually not really. But yeah, he was an IT manager, and my brother was the intelligent one and I was a stupid one, and I was just very, very defiant when it came down to authority as well. So I'm just a very difficult student. Would literally have my arms crossed, and they give me a bit of paper, I screw it up and throw it. And I'm 24 years old at this point. I'm acting like a child. But a lady called Susie came and sat next to me, and she was the tutor inside the prison, and she just said, Lewis, what's the matter? And I can't ever remember my mum and dad ever asking me that before. No one had ever asked me that before. And I just blurted out, I just don't understand. But then I thought to myself, well, why have I said that? Because I haven't even tried. Like, I've not even actually tried to understand. How do I know I don't understand?
Yeah.
But it's just too overwhelming to even consider the thought of proving my dad right, you know? And she supported me, and she helped me pass my functional skills 1 and 2, which is the equivalent of like a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
So basic. And then once I just randomly said to her, and I don't even know why I said it. I don't even know if I was even considering it, but it just sort of popped into my mind because I was doing this education. I said, Susie, do you ever think I could go to university? And I was like genuinely expecting her to say, probably not. You know, like, well, maybe one day.
Or at least go,
you know,
and hesitate.
Yeah, college, you know, maybe one, you know, if you really... But she looked at me dead in the eye, and I've never felt such conviction when she just sort of, almost in disgust that I'd even said it, like in a positive disgust way, said, of course you can. And I believed her. And that was the moment where I believed in myself. I think I needed someone to believe in me before I could believe in myself. In an ideal world, I could have given that to myself the whole time. I just needed one bit of information from somebody just to go, well, if you do, then maybe there's chance for me here. Yeah. And I believed in myself, and from there I just ran with it. And I started to notice changes in my life, and I wanted more of it. And loads of things happened, but that was the moment my life started to transform.
What are your thoughts on the idea that maybe you needed that one little bit of information in that specific moment? And maybe if you'd got that information at any other moment, it might not have landed. Do you think that's something that could be accurate on some level?
100%. And there's also possibly the possibility that maybe that information had been presented to me.
Maybe.
But I wasn't open to receiving it, or I deleted it.
Possibly.
Had these belief systems, and, you know, because what I found amazing was once I started to... I did this wrapped program called Rehabilitation of Addicted Prisoners Trust. I did counselling, psychotherapy. I did obviously maths and English. I learned so much inside that I started to just notice all of these pathways and opportunities that I could take advantage of. One of them being a 6 months rehab that I could apply for, which I got. So I went into 6 months rehab. But then after that, I was able to get benefits that got me housing benefit, that got me my own flat. Then I was able to enroll into an access course and got into college for free. And then I was able to apply for university and got into university with a student loan. And I was like, oh, actually, this was always available to me, but I didn't see it.
Yeah, sure.
And when you and I speak to a lot of people. Actually, I spoke to during this documentary that I filmed recently as well. My old lawyer was on the documentary, and she said, "Oh, it's been a long time since your case, so let's just catch up and everything." And she was like, "What was it like inside?" And I told her about like all the things that I'd done in there, and she was amazed by it. She said, Lewis, I've spent my whole career trying to keep people out of prison. So actually, probably what I should have been doing this whole time is putting them in, because they seem to be getting a lot of support in there. And also, she's listening to the stories from the criminals going, there's no help for us. Yeah. No one wants to help. There's nothing. There's no support. There's no nothing. Yeah. They just want to keep us behind bars. Yeah. Not true. I just can't see it. And I saw it. I started to see it. So I don't know whether or not there was pathways for me the whole time, and I was just unable to access them.
Yeah, sure. I think it's fair to say as well that we all need someone to also show us that there are these pathways, you know, because it's quite a heavy burden to try to do that completely by ourselves, because there's no doubt those pathways were always there. But I don't think it's always down to us alone to see all of them. You know, you just need that first person to just be like, just look in this direction.
You need that coach, didn't you?
You need that coach.
Coaching master specifically.
Of course. Because not all coaches are made equal.
No,
that's for sure. You know, and so we're definitely going to come on to that. And just touching on that as well, you know, I love the idea that that premise of which we teach people inside of NLP, which is the idea of cause and effect. You know, you can either be at effect where you're the victim, you know, and you're just being affected by everything else around you, or you could be the cause, you know, the cause for the journey that you go on and the direction that you move in. And there is a significant shift from you going from effect to cause in that moment, and realizing I'm going to be the cause of the direction that I move in, and accepting the help and accepting those pathways. You know, those things, you're a good example of the reason as to why they're there. You know, the reason as to why the education's in prison, and the reason as to why you can get into rehab for free and you can go to college for free and go to uni as well. Like, that's why they're there, in order to try to create pathways like this.
And
so
AA meetings and NA meetings, like,
that's why they're there.
Yeah, people are like, oh, you know, I can't get off the drink. Well, when was the last time you went to an AA meeting? Never.
Precisely.
You know, so open, you know, try, give it a chance.
Give it a chance,
Yeah.
right? So this is obviously a significant moment of transformation in your story. It's not going to be the only one. And of course, we're going to be diving into the depths of being a coach and what that means. And this is the pinnacle. Well, I mean, of course, it's not the final version of your story in terms of your life story, but at the point that me and you are at now, that's the pinnacle to reach that point of being a coach and being able to help people. So we're going to unpack that. But I'd just like to know a little bit about a couple of other bits of transformation that happened post being in prison, someone believing in you, getting the help, going to rehab, going to college, going to uni. Like, that created this fucking domino effect of a better life. What along your journey, what have been a couple of other really significant moments of transformation for you?
Well, I was in an NA meeting. That was the one that I resonated with the most. That's Narcotics Anonymous, and they also deal with alcohol. So my two things were alcohol and cocaine. And I'd go to sometimes 3 meetings a day just to keep my head straight, because it was warped and wanted me back to that old life every day for the first year probably. And there was this one time where this guy came in, and I'd only been in the meetings for probably, don't know, a couple of weeks or a month. And he asked me to help him out. And I thought, what are you asking me for? So I don't work here, mate. It's like, I'm just like you.
Yeah.
I can't help you out. And then I thought, oh, hang on a minute. Okay, actually, you can get a cup of tea over there. There's some leaflets over there. And just sit down, take a chair, and someone will share their story, and you can share after if you want. And then I thought, I've just been able to help that guy. You know, and then that was a realization that, I have something to offer, even though I am not in the best place myself. And then as a part of my sort of like rehab, it was transitioning back into the community, and I was doing this like volunteering work. And I started volunteering at the job centre and at homeless shelters and all this sort of stuff. I had to, really, actually. It was part of the programme. But so I had to at first. Didn't want to, really, to be honest. And I got my first taste of helping people. And I thought, I walked out there feeling, I feel good. This was nice.
Was that a new feeling?
Yeah. It was like I was bad, so I was never going to even help people.
Yeah.
Why would I? It's bad. But I was forced to help people, and then realised it felt good, and that I could, which was significant. So I kind of realised that, okay, I've got something to offer. I'd like to help people. And then I started to notice all the depression on social media, all the negative. And I wrapped around it at the time. Like, everyone I had on my social media were just probably the worst people you could have had. And I just thought, I could actually, like, all the things that I'd learned from my own journey, I thought I could actually help that person. So I started reaching out to them. I was in Portsmouth at the time. I started reaching out to a few of them, and I said, do you want to go for a coffee? So I think I can help. And I sat down for free, no motive whatsoever, and just helped about 6 people.
Wow.
And had a Costa coffee.
And this would have been before the days of understanding the title of coach.
Yeah, I didn't have a clue.
Life coach.
Never heard of it.
Anything like that.
Never heard of it. And what I realised after the session, I could see their eyes just, I could see breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough. And then I realised, wow, I've just learned some incredible things throughout that journey, because not only did I do a 6 weeks rehabilitation and addicted prisoners trust program, not only did I work with counsellors and psychologists and psychiatrists, not only had I done a 6 months fully intensive rehabilitation treatment centre, but I'd sat in drug and alcohol meetings, AA and NA, sometimes 3 a day, for months. And I'd listened to people's stories. I'd seen their breakthroughs. I'd seen their relapses. I'd seen the people that went out and relapsed and ended up, being found in the toilet with a needle hanging out their arm dead. I'd seen all these extremities and everything they'd shared, and I'd realised I'd absorbed it all. And I'd learned so much about my own personal journey, but also other people's. And it just formed an amazing foundation of how people work. And I was able to apply that as well. and to other people's scenarios. Like I was hearing things, I was like, oh yeah, I remember when that happened with me, or when that happened with that person in rehab, and I was like, and then I take them to this place, or at that point it wasn't pure clean coaching. There was a lot of advice in there,
sort of conversational. You're just chatting, and then there's some occasional breakthroughs that happen through this conversation.
Yeah, like even a quote or something that I'd learned or read, or something, or an experience I'd had, and how I'd battled it, because I created some of my own techniques to battle some of my way out of this, you know. One of them was, you know, when I was in rehab, there was times where it was getting so severe because they literally try and break you down. You know, I thought they was going to teach me how to drink and not take drugs, but they actually taught me about myself, and they wanted me to share my story and find out what those problems were that were causing me to take drink and drugs. They realized it was a symptom, you know, but what was the cause? They wanted me to find that, and they were digging for it. Well, they made me dig for it. And at some points, like I would be battling with, get the fuck out. This, you can't be here. You shouldn't be here. But it was actually on my license condition. So if I left, I'd have gone back to prison.
Right.
But I was still thinking about leaving.
Wow.
So then my only other option was, well, should I kill myself?
Right.
And I don't think I took that fully seriously, but it definitely flicked into my mind.
Okay.
Because it's like overwhelming sense of, what can I do? You know, I'm trapped in this like void of trauma and no way out. And I wrote myself a little note, and then after that started to subside and I got through it, I realized, I'm glad I stayed, because this is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I wrote myself a little note that said, "Dear Lewis, you're doing the right thing. You've been here before. You'll be here again. Keep going. Love, the real Lewis." And this was like the first time I'd created, like, I guess, my own model of how to communicate with a part of yourself that's not always active.
Yeah.
Because when you're in that, you know, trauma state, or, you know, that fear state, or whatever it might be, that empowering part of you that wants you to win's gone.
Yeah.
And you can't see past it.
Yeah.
I couldn't see past it. But now I had that note, I was able to be reminded of it. And I would share these kind of stories with people, and they would just, you know, I see their eyes, you know, and it's like breakthrough after breakthrough. Anyway, to cut a long story short, it's got a very long story, not short, but medium length. These people were loving it and they wanted more. So I was like, I'll tell you what, I'll meet you every week, same time, 6 weeks. And at the end of this 6 weeks, all of their lives were changed.
Yeah.
And not in profound ways for them. Yeah. Like nowadays, the changes we make are absolutely insane.
Of course.
But back then it was like a woman left her toxic partner. A woman started this dog walking business that she really wanted to do. I helped this girl overcome an eating disorder that she had. The big things, actually.
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
You know, we're not talking about helping people make millions of dollars and travel the world and all that sort of stuff.
Well, no, but especially at the time where you still haven't even got a concept of like what a coach is, and you're just sharing things that you find are going to be valuable for them, and talking to them and listening to them deeply, and this is the result. It's quite amazing.
Exactly. And then I started doing some research, and I first of all called myself a personal development mentor, and then started to understand more, did some research, did some online training, and before you know it, you know, I was like, I'm a mindset coach.
Right.
And in terms of transformation, the transformation came when at the same time I was studying to do an access course in business, and I'd finished the access course, and then, as you know, in the UK, you get like a 3-month period between this year and the next year.
Yeah.
And that was the year I was going to uni. So I had 3-month gap. So I was like, I'm going to go traveling. And by this point, I picked up some clients. Yeah. Not charging that much. Like my first client, I charged £600 for 12 weeks.
And what year was this?
2015, 16, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was making like 50 quid an hour, but I was over the moon. Like I literally jumped in the bed.
Yeah.
Like literally, like, oh my God. I can, like, I can, if I can get one, I can get 1,000.
Sure.
So I got a few clients, I started making some money, got myself off the benefits, and I'm like, wow, I've really used this system to my advantage, and now I'm on the way out of it, you know. Exactly how it's intended for. But then I had this desire to travel. That is a story which I don't have the time for, but there's a time I nearly died in hospital, and then I always said I would travel if I got through that. I'll very quickly mention it. So I broke my jaw in a fight, and then as a result of that also tore my gullet, and it was letting air go around my lungs and my heart, and I got surgical emphysema, and I was told that there was a 30%, I have to have an operation to put like a tube in my gullet and in my bowel, and have an operation where there's a 30% chance I could die. Wow. They got me to ring my brother and my mum and tell them to say my goodbyes. I didn't care though, honestly. I just said, if I get through this, I'm going to travel. And then even when I was getting put under the anaesthetic, they said, you're not bothered at all, are you? I said, no. I said, we can tell because your heart rate hasn't changed whatsoever.
We literally know.
Yeah, I was like lying there just like, and then they woke up after, and this just, again, just, you know, you're just going to have to trust me. I had all the doctors around me, and they said, when I woke up, and they said, you had us all excited, we've never seen that before. We put the camera down your throat, went to start doing the operation, and the little nick that was in your gullet that was causing the air to escape into your lungs and around your heart, putting pressure onto it, had just closed. Like it was just basically just like a, you know, like a,
it shut.
Just shut. And they was going to have to do this like severe operation. And the biggest problem was if they do the operation, then it can get infected. So they have to put the pipes in, because if you start eating through your gullet and you infect it, you can cause, you can die basically.
All sorts, yeah.
So that the best case scenario was 6 months in intensive care, they told me before. And I was told that you were on antibiotics for 2 weeks and you're gone.
Right.
So I started travelling, but I ended up in Magaluf and Ayia Napa, and things went absolutely tits up.
Okay.
But let's save that story for another time. But anyway, a couple of years later, I realised that I still wanted to travel, but I didn't get a chance to fulfil that because I, you know, went to the wrong countries.
Yeah.
And I started to travel around Southeast Asia, and I went to Thailand. I went to Indonesia, but I didn't get to Bali. I went to Singapore, went to Cambodia. One other place, I can't remember. And I served all my clients online. It was almost, I didn't plan to, but I just thought, why not?
And this definitely was very much at a time where that was not the common thing to do.
No.
Because even when I met you in 2019, it even then was an unusual thing to do. And people were just calling it Skype coaching. Oh, have you heard this new thing called Skype coaching?
Yeah,
and I think at that time you were using Zoom and you were doing your sessions.
Facebook video.
Oh, you were using Facebook video.
Zoom didn't exist.
No, yeah, well, Zoom, yeah, exactly, didn't even exist at the time. But you, that would have been a step up from Skype coaching though. You know, using Facebook video, because that probably would have been a new feature back then as well. And not many people were even using that. And so, you know, it was quite a revolutionary way to coach clients back then. And you were doing it in Thailand. And
not only that, but I was getting clients as well. Because that was another thing. People weren't using social, like now it's just the whole world is doing it. But well, it feels like they are.
It feels like they are. They're not. Yeah. They're definitely not.
Okay. It's a lot more, you know, bigger than it was.
Yeah.
But back then it used to be, if you want to get a client, you go to a networking meeting, you have a coffee, you give out business cards, and there's 8 people in the room.
Yeah. That's how I used to get clients. Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not doing that. It doesn't make any sense.
Oh, it was really fucking hard as well. Like,
I bet. I tried it and I realised it didn't work.
Yeah.
So I stopped.
To make it work was like a proper grind.
Because there's like, even if you was to sell to everyone in there and actually get the client, you're still not really in a good position.
No.
It's the same people that show up each week.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, so I realised that you could very easily just post your story on social media, share content that people connect with. And I had I had a formula that was subconscious. I didn't realise I had a formula at the time, but I was doing a certain set, you know, list of things that were getting me clients. Come back to the UK after these 3 months, started my university degree, got 3 months in, was being taught by a university lecturer that was so the degree was business management and entrepreneurship. Wow. It was like a new cutting edge course on entrepreneurship that I thought, wow, finally, like they've actually upgraded some of these modules. You know, it's actually not just generic anymore. They teach me entrepreneurship. Perfect. And it was taught by a guy that had never left university. He was an academic. He had a PhD in entrepreneurship or something, or product design or something. I think it was product design. He actually
wow, that's like having a PhD in playing football and you've never been on a pitch.
Yeah, and you're teaching people how to like kick and like
out of a book. This is how you do it. This is how you kick a ball.
Yeah. And after 3, and also I loved to learn before, because that was all I was learning just for the sake of it. But then I realised that I was now learning things that I wanted to learn for the business to grow. So I was strategically deciding what I needed, where were the gaps, and then I was finding the education that filled those gaps in my business. But then I was realising that the education I was learning in university was literally for the sake of it. So I lost the passion for it. I was like, this isn't a good use of my time. So I made the decision, and I don't like to use the word drop out because that's got the connotation of like failing, isn't it? I made the decision that it just wasn't the right route.
Yeah, sure.
You know, this doesn't serve me. they're teaching marketing things.
Change it to elevate above.
That'd be better.
So you made the decision to elevate above university.
Yeah, I did. And to put it in context, I was a multi-millionaire by the time they even graduated, my cohort. So
I know
it worked. And that's because, I'll just go back to saying what I said there, because I think it's really important. A lot of people just blindly learn. They just absorb content, information. Your brain can't remember that. It's going to delete 95% of it. You probably know a more accurate statistic, but it's going to delete a lot of it, and it can't remember it, and it can't process it, and it certainly can't apply it. So I recommend that people decide what they want to achieve, what they want to do, and then find the exact education that's going to bridge the gap between where they are now and where they want to be. Whether that's a coach or a mentor or a book or a course, it doesn't necessarily have to be a coach like we were obviously advocates for, but learn the exact information, because I was able to leave all the stuff at university that I didn't need, the generic stuff, and start learning the specific things that were going to help me grow and make an impact in the business. And I was able to be very accurate and specific with the education that I gave and implement everything that I learned.
So we've got 20 minutes.
Okay.
So
feels like we've been here a long time.
Yeah, no, so we've still got 20 minutes. So what we'll do is we'll properly, this next section with as we now move into from this to the coaching masters, and we'll make sure we get a lot of good Facebook content with this as well. As in exactly the same as what we've been doing it anyway. But now that it's moving on to TCN, this is a great opportunity now to be let people know that that's the place to be. Okay. So you left uni at that point, you elevated above university. What happened after that?
So I built a business that was making a couple $100,000 a year, and to me that blew my head off. That was more money than I'd ever expected to make.
And this was your coaching business now as a mindset coach.
So I made 6 figures in 7 or 8 months, and that was 100,000 English pounds using social media, and that was just absolutely insane, because I started to get people really good results as well. There's just 2 parts of it. You need to have a good strategy, and you need to be good at coaching, product and selling it. You know this, but for people listening, you can't just have one or the other. You could have a brilliant strategy, but if your product's no good, it's not going to work. And you could have a brilliant product, but if you can't sell it, then you're not going to get any sales. But luckily, my coaching was really effective because of all the experience I'd picked up. And I had a bit of a unique ability to be able to see new upcoming strategies that other people hadn't seen yet. And I first of all made about 100 grand, moving into 150 grand just as a mindset coach. But then I had other coaches that were 50, 60 years old messaging me saying, Lewis, I've been in the industry for 30 years. And at this point, I looked about 19 years old, by the way. I hadn't even grown a beard at this point. I don't know. I had to actually use, this is a bit of a confession, I actually used something called minoxidil on my face. Minoxidil? Yeah, minoxidil, which is like a hair growth formula for the head on my face to actually even grow this.
Wow.
Yeah, up until 24, I didn't have any facial hair. So I looked really young, about 19 when I was 24. Once I cleaned my act up and stuff, I was left with a very fresh face. These older coaches, because we know that the demographic of a coach has gotten a bit younger over the years, but actually traditionally it's a 50, 60 maybe year old woman.
Probably done some therapy in the past, discovered coaching. It's a bit more forward thinking. Maybe
done some degrees, maybe doing it for 20 years, and typically don't get good results because they're doing the business card thing, in the networking meetings. And they were messaging me how are you doing it? And I said, well, I just do this, and this. You're doing those things, right? And they were like, no, I've never heard of those things. I was like, really? So there was another example of, okay, I've got more value to add here. And of course I can't just, give this out for free because, I'm going to be running out of time. So I started charging for it. So I said, all right, well, I'll sell you a coaching program, but now I'm a business and mindset coach. And they went hand in hand perfectly because, it wasn't always strategy. Sometimes it was the limiting beliefs of I'm not good enough. I can't charge that money. I don't want to put myself out there. So it wasn't just strictly strategy. It was a business and mindset combination. And I started helping people and coaches get clients. And this is before the days of there being a load of people doing that, very, very, very early days. And then at that point, I met Liam James Collins.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we don't really talk about this. Do you know what I mean? Your story, of course. I know parts of your story. We've spoken about it a lot over the years, but it's interesting to just go right back from where you considered to be the beginning, which of course is you sitting on the toilet as a toddler, saying, "Please come and wipe my bum," all the way up until the point where you meet me.
Which you asked me to wipe your bum.
4 years later, here we are. So yeah, tell me about that. This is obviously, I could tell my own version of that, but we're here to talk about your story, so I want to hear your version of it.
Yeah, so I saw a Facebook ad of Liam pop up, and I saw him looking really cool and really professional.
By the way, for the listeners, just in case you don't know, that is me he's talking about. People might be listening to this thinking, who's Liam James Collins? Right. Imagine if this is the first episode they've listened to of the TCM podcast, and we're like, yeah, fucking great. Who is this guy? Yeah, he's talking about me.
We are business partners, by the way, and I'm not just a normal guest, you know. Yeah, we should have probably put a bit more. Because sometimes people just search this podcast, don't they? And they might just be interested in the topic.
Mate, tens of thousands of people. So this is probably, well, it definitely is the first time many of these listeners have watched this episode or listened to this episode. Right. So
yeah, we're business partners, and we met 4 years ago.
And this is how.
So Liam, actually, you know, give yourself a bit of credit. You said you used to do the offline stuff, but you were dabbling with Facebook ads as well, weren't you? Because that's actually how I met you. I don't know how effective they were, but
that's what you. Well, I mean, they were very effective actually. But that's so. So you saw one of my ads.
I saw your ad, and it was you with a snowboard over both sides of your head. So that's the one I saw. Just to let you know.
Love it.
And I thought, wow, he's a cool young coach. Yeah. And that I had never met another cool young coach. And I know I've heard your stories. I know it's similar. You kind of had the same realization. Very similar. Because most coaches were women and they were older. And yeah, I just hadn't met another young cool coach with tattoos that was like, living that lifestyle.
We hadn't seen another one of us.
Yeah.
And we both had that same experience. I had never seen another one of me, and you had never seen another one of you until the moment you saw that ad.
Yeah, so I saw that ad, and I kind of just ignored it really, because I guess I probably thought you was way more successful than me, and probably wouldn't. You know, I didn't really think about any sort of prospects of there being any synergy there, because you got your own thing running now. Even ads to me at the time was like, Facebook ads, well, I didn't even know how to use them. Yeah. You know, I had my own thing, and you had your own, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And then you dropped into my DMs, didn't you? Slid in.
Yeah.
So you slid in. And
I can't remember. I'm trying to think why, because of course, I find that a really interesting part of the story that you had seen me first on the ads, because in my memory, I had either seen you first because I was just scrolling and obviously the algorithms were working, or I'd seen you comment on something, or I can't remember, but yeah, I sent you a message.
Yeah, and I can't even remember what you said, but it was something just...
Yeah, it was something along the lines of, look, there's no agenda here.
Yeah.
I don't want anything, I'm not asking for anything, but I see what you're doing, and I appreciate it, and keep doing it because I get it. It was something like that. And
then actually I was in London, and I was actually filming for the TV program First Dates.
Right.
They actually ended up cutting me in the end because of the criminal record, but they did actually film the first bit with me in front of the love heart.
Okay.
So that's why I was going into London, and I was like, Liam, I'm in London.
Yeah.
You want to go for a coffee? And at first, she was like, "Oh, don't know if I can actually, because I've got to go to this." Like,
that was
your auntie's or
I was going to go and visit my auntie and uncle in Folkestone, and I hadn't packed yet. And I remember I sent you a message, and I was like, because I was going to come and meet you at that studio, and I sent you a message, and I was like, "Oh mate, like I'm not going to be able to come to this studio, but if you want, you can come to my apartment because I got a little bit of time."
To be honest, I'm a bit of an introvert, and that for me was a bit of a, oh god, like. And I was thinking about, like, oh, shall I? Should I pull out? Should I just go home? But you know, universe guided me to your door. A lovely cup of tea. No, cup of coffee.
Cup of coffee.
Nice strong one. That's thank you for that.
Okay,
I remember the strength of the coffee, and I thought, okay, that's my kind of guy.
and that was it. Yeah, you came to my home. You came to where I lived, and take it from there.
And then I told you my process of how I get clients.
Yeah,
because you were doing differently. So for everyone listening, Liam was basically running Facebook ads to a hotel where he would get people in person, deliver training, and then at the end
sell them a course.
Sell you a course. And
now, bearing in mind, like now, obviously, how much we know about marketing. you know, it was fucking impressive I was able to actually do that.
Yeah,
because I was getting people to see a Facebook ad of, they don't know me. I've not added any value to their lives whatsoever. I'm standing there with a fucking snowboard, right? I get them to decide that they're going to leave their job, get on the tube, come to this place where they're going to sit in a physical room with me for 2 hours. They have no idea who I am. I'm standing up at the front of the room. I introduce them to the idea of coaching for the first time in their lives and show them what coaching is. And then at the end of that 2 hours, I'm getting them to buy like a fucking $3,000 course. And I was doing, that was my life. Like, that was my whole business. That was what I was doing before I met you.
And I was like, oh, Liam, this is amazing, but you don't want to be doing it offline. You want to be doing it online.
Yeah.
Same way, just online.
I was like, what do you mean?
And then I explained to you the strategy, but then also, you know, in the back of my mind, I already knew there was a missing piece in my puzzle. So the missing piece was, as the industry was developing, there was becoming more people that were starting to become business coaches, and there was starting to be more people that were offering services to coaches, because social media was becoming more of a thing. Like, even within like a year, you know, it went from, you know, a couple of people doing it to, oh, there's more and more and more, you know. And I was finding myself now having to compete for business. Whereas before they were coming to me, and now it's like, oh, I'm deciding between you and this other guy. And I'm like, I don't like this, you know, I don't want to compete. So I knew that I was getting people at the wrong point. I was getting people once they'd become a coach. And I knew that I needed to get them before they became a coach.
Yeah, which was what my whole business was about.
When I say get them, by the way, should probably use some better language. When I say get them, I mean get their attention.
Sure.
Yeah,
Capture their attention.
Yeah,
capture them.
That was a perfect that was a perfect save. That was, wasn't
Capture their attention.
Okay. And yeah, I realized that if I could get them at the point where they weren't already a coach and help them become a coach, then I would be the first person they would see when they want to grow their coaching business or start their coaching business and learn that strategy from me.
Yeah.
And it was just the yin to the yang kind of thing when I met you, and the energy was just perfect. And you shared, you know, a story about your dad, and, you know, obviously you've had trauma with your dad, I've had trauma with my dad, both passed away. We just connected. And right there and then my strategic brain just said, that is the route you need to take. But also on an inner level, it was also like, that's the guy you need to go to the next level.
And we did.
And also that is a guy that you want to be around, because he's the fucking nicest guy I've ever met in my life. His coffee's bang on. And
I think you appreciated my dress sense back then as well. I remember you mentioned that a couple of times.
Did I?
Yeah, you were like, you actually sent me a couple of my own Instagram pictures, and you were like, oh, mate, I want to dress like this.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
You sent me this one. I was wearing this kind of like white polo or something like that. I had some shades on. I think I was in Paris at the time. And I think this was a little bit afterwards when we were talking about doing our first photo shoot. Right. And you were like, yeah, this is the kind of look we're going for. This is what we've got to be creating.
Yeah. Just for everyone who might be watching this is actually Liam's jacket.
That's an expensive.
Me a thing or two.
That's a pricey jacket as well.
Taking home with me.
Yeah, it suits you. You can't go wrong with a bit of Reese, I'll tell you that. But no, I mean, it was exactly as you just mentioned, because of course when we had that coffee that day, my one and only element of my business was taking somebody who wasn't a coach, who wanted to become a coach, and in many respects actually prior to that, convincing them that they need to become a coach. You know, they hadn't even made that decision yet, but they were kind of like, they just heard about it. And so that was it. That was what you needed at the time. Because,
and also kind of what you needed, because in order to be able to fully sell that opportunity, there needs to be a viable return on investment, where they know 100%. How to get the strategy and clients. Otherwise, what's the point of getting a certificate if they're going to put it in their top drawer and do nothing with it?
Yeah, which the vast majority of people, especially at that time, were doing that. Yeah, you know, they were getting the certificate. They still do it now, unless that not in our community, unless they do you know, join our membership. And
I thought
actually
you were going to start naming some competitors then.
No,
unless they go to
who would I have to name? We wouldn't make any sense. There are no other names, but yeah, mate. Unless they join the membership and they actually consume our content, they will just be putting that stuff in their top drawer. But yes, it was just like the perfect synergy then, because I had part A, you had part B. I could create the coaches. I had the knowledge and the experience of how to do that. You could then help them build their coaching business, help them get clients. And we started there. We just started with the basics, didn't we? Of like, okay, well, we got to start at stage number one, which is turning people into coaches. Yeah. I know how to do that. Let's do it.
And just to really shout out what we did, what we created was absolutely magical. It was beautiful, because we put our heart and soul into that. Every single person that's, ever given a comment on that said, they either have loved it and it's transformed their lives, or they've said they've done other qualifications or other training before and it's been boring and sterile. And what we did was we literally just poured our hearts into it, and we shared our stories with it. And most of our training it's probably about 50-50 split of story versus technique.
As it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people can really understand how that stuff actually works in the real world. And we were sharing it from an experiential point of view. Like, this is how we felt. Oh, and this is how we got through it. And, and as Rich Litvin said in The Prosperous Coach, you can only take someone to the depths that you've been yourself.
Exactly.
And we've been to those depths and we know the way out. And we created, a little bit by fluke, just magic.
Just magic.
Absolute magic, and from week 1 to 12.
And what Lewis is talking about there is our flagship original 12-week coaching accreditation program for someone to become a fully qualified and internationally accredited coach.
Which is now 4 years old. And we've had conversations probably only once or twice about, should we redo that? Should we do any professional, because we recorded it on Zoom. Yeah. Right? And we've thought, a multi-million-dollar company now, maybe we should re-record it. And we've said no, can't touch it.
Don't repaint the Mona Lisa.
No,
you don't. It doesn't matter how much money you got now or how much tech you've got. It doesn't matter that you could print the Mona Lisa on a fucking poster. Just don't repaint the original.
And I couldn't do it again because
no, it would
that
be different.
Energy, that young blood energy or whatever.
Yeah.
It was just so vibrant and fresh because we'd just been through that transformation. Yeah, it wasn't long.
No, it wasn't.
You was actually going through it probably.
Well, I was. Yeah, I mean, I'd lost my dad October 2018. We were filming the course April 2019.
I mean, exactly. And I mean, I'd only come out of prison 3-4 years before that, and it was just fresh. The energy was just aligned. We were just sharing it from our hearts, and we created some techniques. And that's another thing we did. We actually created our own techniques, didn't we? We sat down and we was like, how can we make this more simple? How can we make this more effective? How can we apply this to the real world, And so not only did it have originality in it, it had experience in it, and it had just pure energy of two people that were passionate about sharing the solution that they'd found. Because we have gifts. We had been gifted somehow this opportunity to be able to change our lives or get through the things we have.
And also as well, not forgetting that we had essentially pretty much completely paused making any other kind of money because we just threw ourselves into that, and whatever money we did make from that initial course we put straight back into the business. So us as individuals, we had gone from making a lot of money as individual people building our own individual things to then all of a sudden just completely stopping that overnight and saying, instead of that, we're just gonna do this. And that as well is what I think brought a lot of rawness to it, because that meant that we weren't personally making or taking any money for a really long time, because we were just focused on how can we just make this the best. And that brings its own level. I mean, they talk, you hear the stories of Elon Musk when he sold PayPal and made millions of dollars, but he was borrowing money for rent because he's putting it all back in his business.
SpaceX.
That was fucking scarily relatable, that's what we were doing. We were living off our own means, because we were just putting everything back into the business.
Made 400 grand.
We didn't see any of it. It was we were putting it all back into the business, and we just continued to do that, and we have continued to do that for the last 4 years. We've just put it all back into the business, and we've just ensured that it has grown as much as it possibly can. And now we're at a stage where this time last year, we received a valuation of $25 million, which undoubtedly has gone up because...
I've already been told recently that it's due to be significantly higher.
Well, there you go. We've got over 100 employees. We have had over 7,000 students. I mean, this is all fucking significant, and every time I tell anyone about this, people that have been in the industry for decades,
can't believe it.
They can't believe it,
And that's scratching the surface, because there's a lot of things we haven't revealed, things we can reveal and things we can't. There's some, for example, we've got virtual reality, we've got the co-working space in Bali, we're working on AI, we've got our own app, we've got various different brands, but there's also it's a shame we can't talk about it because obviously some of it's NDA'd and things that are in the works, but like there's some amazing things that are coming as well, guys. So like if you think the progress we've made over 4 years is a lot, I mean, this is getting us off the ground.
This is it. This is version 1.
This is getting started.
Yeah,
for a lot of people.
Yeah, this is just a platform. This is one platform in order to launch us into the big stuff.
Yeah,
which is imminent. It's imminent. So, well, we got 1 minute.
Okay,
we've got 1 minute. So I think this is going to be really interesting hearing this from you because whenever I interview one of the TCM success stories, of which there are many, and I've got a backlog of people that I want to bring onto the podcast because they've gone and built incredible coaching businesses, making lots of money, making a big impact. I asked them this question, but it'd be interesting asking it to you. We have tens of thousands of listeners with the TCM podcast, and a lot of those listeners are people that are at that point where they're kind of just thinking about maybe jumping in. They're not quite there yet, but they're listening to a few of the podcast episodes. They know what we do. They're kind of looking at our membership and they're debating it and they're thinking, can I do it? Is it for me? Do I know enough about it at this point? And they're just nearly about to jump in to explore it and see what this coaching thing is all about at the Coaching Masters. What do you say to that person?
It's $9.99 for the fucking membership. Stop being a tight fuck and just sign up and find out.
That's the only Facebook ad we need. That's much better than the snowboard ones I used to use.
Look, if you don't know if it's for you, try it before you buy it. That's why we created the membership. Our structure is we have a $9.99 membership. It's called CoachFlix. It's got hundreds of hours of self-study material in there. Not only that, but it's got coaching certification. So you'll actually become a certified life coach for $9.99, which is about £7. Anyone can find £7. I could go out there and find 20 pence pieces on the floor, and within a couple of hours I'd have enough.
I could guarantee I could just look under this. I could look under the sofa over there. I'll probably find £7 in this room.
You can find £7 if you really want £7, right?
Yeah.
And give it a try. But that was my blatant, abrupt answer. But the reality is there's probably something that's holding you back, that's keeping you stuck, that's, there's some fear around it. Work out what that is and work on it, because, that thing can be the thing that just keeps you stuck your entire life. And you risk a lot by allowing that thing to continue keeping you stuck. Think about what the cost of not seeking that opportunity could be. We talk a lot about risk and regret. You're going to take a risk, but what you risk by not taking a risk is the future of possible regret. Now, I can tell you, when you're lying on your deathbed, as cheesy as this might sound, when you're lying on your deathbed and you're regretful of all those opportunities you didn't take, you're never going to be worried about the risks that you took. It's always the things that you didn't do. And this is an opportunity to not just change your life, but change your family's life. It's not just an opportunity to make money. It's an opportunity to feel rewarded truly and fulfilled for the work and contribution you're doing to the world. This isn't just I don't know if it's a business model that I can get behind. This is an entire different identity that you can fall into. You get to become your first client. You get to, learn the best tools and techniques and models and frameworks on the planet for personal development. Apply them to yourself. Have an absolute transformation to the point where you feel compelled to share it with others, and your life will never be the same. Can you risk really not trying that? I would say.
And you're definitely not going to miss that £7 when you're on your deathbed either. No. Love it. Lewis Raymond Taylor, co-founder of the Coaching Masters alongside myself. This has been a very special one-off episode of the Coaching Masters podcast, interviewing you, revealing new parts of your story, adding value, inspiring others. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.